You know that feeling when you're absolutely convinced you're right about something, and then later you realize you might have been a little off? You probably recognize that stubborn feeling of being right, that inner certainty that just doesn't want to budge. It's a universal experience, one we've all had. Remember when you were a kid and you realized that one of your long-held beliefs wasn't quite true anymore? Maybe it was about Santa Claus, or that your parents knew everything, or that a certain friend would be by your side forever. That moment of realization can be jarring, but it's also a doorway to a deeper kind of understanding. This is a lot like what happens when we start to look at the world through the eyes of someone like Dr. Gabor Maté. He's a physician and author who has spent decades working with people struggling with severe addiction, mental illness, and trauma. And he offers a perspective that can feel, at first, a little uncomfortable, because it asks us to question some very big things we often take for granted. His core idea is actually quite simple, though its implications are enormous. He proposes that much of the addiction and deep emotional pain we see in our society is not a personal failing or a random disease, but a predictable response to a culture that systematically creates trauma and disconnection. He famously said, "Not why the addiction, but why the pain."
Now, if you're using something for temporary relief or pain relief or pleasure, and you crave it, despite negative consequences, you've got an addiction. Whereas if you're using social media not to escape emotional distress, not because you're craving it, but simply because it's a useful modality, and you don't suffer negative consequences, then it's not an addiction.
This flips the entire conversation on its head. We're so often asking, what's wrong with this person? Why can't they just stop? But Maté asks a more compassionate and ultimately more useful question. What hurt them so much that this became their best way to cope? The addiction, whether it's to substances, work, shopping, or our phones, is not the real problem. It's a symptom. It's a desperate attempt to solve a problem of deep, often unrecognized pain and a feeling of not being truly connected to oneself or others. Now, this is where things get really interesting for all of us, even if we don't identify with having a severe addiction. Many of us cling to familiar ideas because they make the world seem stable and understandable. We have this natural tension inside us all the time. On one hand, there's our instinctive, fast-thinking mind. It wants to be right, it wants to protect us, and it loves clear, simple answers. It's the part of us that gets defensive in an argument, or that judges someone else's life choices quickly. It's a survival mechanism. But on the other hand, there's a quieter, deeper awareness. This is the part that can pause and wonder. It's the part that felt a little sad when you realized your childhood belief was an illusion, but also a little wiser. This deeper awareness is curious about complexity. It's the part of you that might look at someone struggling and instead of just seeing a junkie or a failure, feels a tug of curiosity about their story. According to Maté's work, our entire society often caters to that first, instinctive mind, encouraging us to seek quick fixes and outward success, while starving that deeper, more compassionate awareness. Think about it. Our economic system, capitalism, is brilliant at producing things and generating wealth, but it often does so by promoting values that can be deeply damaging to the human spirit. It encourages constant competition, relentless productivity, the acquisition of more and more stuff, and the idea that our worth is tied to what we achieve or own. For a young child, what they need most is unconditional love, attuned attention, and the space to be their authentic, messy, emotional selves. But from a very young age, many of us learn that to be accepted and successful, we need to perform. We need to get good grades, be pleasant, suppress big feelings, and eventually get a good job to buy a good house. This creates a fundamental disconnect. Our true, authentic self, with its needs for connection, play, and emotional expression, gets buried under a mountain of expectations. We learn to abandon ourselves to fit in. This self-abandonment, this loss of connection to our own genuine needs and feelings, is a form of trauma. It's not always the big, dramatic trauma we think of. It's often a quiet, chronic trauma of not being seen or loved for who we really are. And that pain, that disconnection, is what so many people are trying to soothe, whether with a glass of wine at the end of a long day, losing themselves in social media validation, or working 60 hours a week to feel worthy. We all do this in ways big and small. We all sometimes fool ourselves into thinking that the next purchase, the next promotion, the next vacation will finally make us happy, filling a hole we often can't even name. We are all, in a sense, using something outside of ourselves to try and fix something feeling broken inside, because we live in a system that creates that broken feeling as a matter of course. It's not a personal failing, it's a cultural one. Seeing this isn't about blame, but about understanding. This cracks open the entire conversation about why we do the things we do. We start this journey in a place of simple, clear categories. We see the world in black and white, where people who struggle are over there and we are over here. We believe addiction is a simple matter of bad choices or a lack of willpower, a personal failing that happens to other people. It's a comfortable, if distant, way to see things. In this phase, our reactions are instant and certain. We see a person on the street and we might instinctively cross to the other side, our knee-jerk reaction, one of judgment or fear. This is the societal reflex that Gabor Maté contrasts with a compassionate response, the quick label versus the deeper inquiry. We feel secure in these simple stories we tell ourselves about how the world works. But then, we enter the confusing middle, and the ground beneath our feet begins to shift. This is the phase where things get profoundly complicated and deeply uncomfortable. You might be someone who resists change at first, holding on to that old, simpler story, because the new one feels too vast and demanding. When we first hear Maté's idea that our entire economic system, with its relentless pressure for performance and profit, is a massive trauma-generating machine, it can feel overwhelming. It's no longer just about one person's bad choices. It's about the architecture of our daily lives. The long hours we work to feel secure, the constant comparison on social media, the underlying fear of not being enough. These aren't just life's annoyances. According to Maté's view, these are the very challenges that wear down our sense of self and disconnect us from our authentic needs, creating the inner void that addiction attempts to fill. Most of us feel uneasy during this transition because it implicates all of us. We start noticing the ways we ourselves soothe our anxieties, perhaps with shopping, scrolling, or a glass of wine, and we have to ask, where is the line? This middle part is tough because the easy answers are gone, and we are left sitting with difficult, systemic questions without a clear roadmap forward. Gradually, however, a new clarity begins to emerge from that confusion. It's not a simplistic answer, but a more nuanced and empowered understanding. We stop seeing people, including ourselves, as broken problems to be fixed, and start seeing them as wounded beings responding to their environments and their pain. The thoughtful response that Maté advocates for replaces the knee-jerk reaction. Instead of asking what is wrong with you, we learn to ask what happened to you. This shift changes everything. We begin to see that healing is not just an individual pursuit, but a cultural one. You may catch yourself pausing before reacting lately, choosing curiosity over judgment when a colleague is short-tempered or a loved one is struggling. We start to understand that the person numbing their pain with substances and the person numbing their pain with 80-hour work weeks are on the same spectrum, just using different tools to cope with the same societal pressures. This new perspective is liberating because it fosters profound compassion for others and for ourselves. It moves us from blame to understanding, from isolation to connection. We see that by creating a society that values human connection over relentless achievement, we aren't just helping those with severe addictions. We are healing a collective wound and building a world where fewer people need to escape in the first place. The journey ends not with a perfect solution, but with a clearer, kinder lens through which to see our shared human experience. Through this discomfort, we begin to notice something shifting. It's not that the world outside has changed, but something within us is starting to recalibrate. The tightness in the chest that used to arrive every Sunday evening, the low-grade anxiety humming in the background of a seemingly normal Tuesday, these old companions begin to feel less solid, less permanent. We start to question the narratives we've been telling ourselves for years, the stories about who we are and what we're capable of, and we realize that many of them were never ours to begin with. They were hand-me-down beliefs, inherited expectations, or conclusions drawn by a much younger version of ourselves who was just trying to make sense of a confusing world. This questioning isn't a rebellion. It's a quiet homecoming. As we sit with this feeling, without immediately reaching for the phone or the remote to numb it out, we create a tiny pocket of space. In that space, a new kind of awareness can bloom. We might notice how often we people please, agreeing to things we don't actually want to do. And for the first time, we can trace that impulse back not to innate kindness, but to a deep-seated fear of rejection or conflict. We might observe the automatic way we criticize ourselves for a small mistake, hearing an internal voice that sounds suspiciously like a critical parent or a harsh teacher from long ago. These patterns, once invisible because they were so woven into the fabric of our being, now stand out like threads of a different color. We see the mechanism, and in seeing it, its power over us begins to wane. This is where the real work and the real magic begins. It's not about fixing ourselves because we were never broken. It's about gently disentangling our authentic self from the protective layers we built around it. Those layers were necessary once. They were brilliant adaptations that helped a younger us navigate difficult environments. But now, they've become like a winter coat worn indoors on a summer day, cumbersome, overheating, and no longer serving their purpose. Thanking those protections for their service, rather than shaming ourselves for having them, is a profound act of self-compassion. It allows us to finally set them down without guilt. You'll likely find daily decisions coming easier, not because life is less complicated, but because you're starting to consult your own inner compass more than the external noise of what you should do. This process of shedding is rarely a straight line. Some days, the old patterns feel as comfortable as a worn-in sweater, and we slip back into them without thinking. Other days, the new way of being feels awkward and unfamiliar, like speaking a new language. That's okay. The progress is in the noticing, in the gentle course correction back to ourselves. It's in the moment we pause before reacting, choosing a response that aligns with who we want to be now, not who we were conditioned to be. Many notice old frustrations don't bother them as much. The driver who cuts us off, the long line at the grocery store. These minor irritations lose their charge because our sense of inner stability is less dependent on everything outside going perfectly. Our worth is no longer on the line in every single interaction. What emerges from this consistent, gentle attention is a reconnection with our own wants and needs, which we may have buried long ago. We rediscover dormant curiosities, simple joys we had forgotten, and a sense of personal preference that feels truly ours. It might be a desire to spend a Saturday morning reading instead of scrolling, a pull to walk in the woods, or the courage to finally say no to a social obligation that drains us. This isn't selfishness, it's integrity. It's the act of building a life that actually fits the person living it. We begin to make choices from a place of desire, not fear, from a place of connection, not obligation. The energy that was once spent maintaining those old protective walls is now freed up for living. This journey inward inevitably changes how we relate to others. As we become more compassionate with our own flaws and struggles, we naturally extend that understanding to the people around us. We stop taking things so personally, recognizing that another person's reaction often says more about their inner world than it does about us. Our relationships become less transactional and more authentic. We can show up not as who we think we're supposed to be, but as we are, which is the only real foundation for true connection. We set boundaries not as walls to keep people out, but as fences to honor our own garden, which allows us to be more genuinely present and generous within our relationships. It's a quiet revolution, this returning to oneself. There's no fanfare, no certificate of completion. The rewards are internal and deeply personal, a sense of peace that doesn't require perfect conditions, a resilience that comes from knowing we can handle discomfort, and a newfound trust in our own inner voice. The world continues to spin with all its chaos and demands, but we meet it from a different place. We are no longer buffeted by every wind. We have found an anchor within. This is the profound liberation that comes from no longer abandoning yourself. It's the courage to be imperfect, to be vulnerable, and to be exactly who you are. Together, we discover that this path isn't about arriving at a final destination of being fully healed or enlightened. It's about the ongoing, gentle practice of coming home to ourselves, moment by moment. It's about trading the exhausting performance of a perfect life for the messy, beautiful, and authentic experience of a real one. And in doing so, we find that the freedom we were searching for outside was always waiting within, a quiet truth beneath the noise. This is the core of it, the key insight that Gabor Maté so beautifully offers us, that true freedom feels less like a triumphant victory march and more like finally taking off shoes that never quite fit and feeling the solid, welcoming ground beneath your feet for the very first time.